There are just 2 days remaining until what could be the most consequential election of our lifetimes. And NBC News is out with its final poll, which shows both Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump tied at 49% nationally. But it features Harris leading among voters on the key issues of abortion, bringing the country together, and looking out for the middle class. Notably, voters are also demonstrating more faith in Harris than Trump on the matter of protecting our democracy. And this idea is central to Harris's final pitch to voters in these final days before the election. Here's what she told reporters just today in Michigan.
The systems that are in place for this election in 2024 have integrity. They are good systems, and the vote of the people will determine the outcome of this election, and everyone must know that their vote is their power to determine the outcome of the election, and their vote will count. It does matter.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump's contempt for democracy was on full display during a rally in Pennsylvania earlier today. Again, here is just a part of his chilling message.
They are fighting so hard to steal this damn thing. We had the safest border in the history of our country the day that I left. I shouldn't have left. I mean, honestly, because we did so well. To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much, because I don't mind.
Now, the Trump campaign released a statement after those remarks, which feel more like gaslighting than anything else. Referring to the media, they write, quote, he was actually looking out for their welfare far more than his own. Now, Trump's consistently violent rhetoric lays bare a crucial difference between our two political parties, if you want to call them that. In a new piece, columnist Ezra Klein wrote in the New York Times, we are used to elections pitting Democrats against Republicans. This election pits guardians against counter-revolutionaries. Harris surrogates and supporters are united not by shared policy goals, but by a shared defense of American institutions. That's the core reason that Harris's coalition is noticeably disparate among groups of people. As her running mate Tim Walz brags, we got Bernie Sanders, Dick Cheney, and Taylor Swift on the same ticket. Now, leaving Taylor Swift out for a moment, what on earth do Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney have in common besides both being Americans who simply want democracy here to survive? Meanwhile, the Trump coalition is united by a shared distrust and desire to take control of American institutions. Klein writes, the Trumpist coalition isn't conservative at all. It's counter-revolutionary. It believes a leftist revolution has corrupted American institutions, and a counter-revolution, which may even require violence, is necessary. That's why the Trump side has elevated people like Elon Musk, who has been using his social media platform and Trump rallies to peddle anti-immigrant election voter fraud conspiracies, and RFK Jr., who built his entire failed presidential campaign around a whole host of conspiracies, including baseless theories about vaccines and antidepressants. And in today's Republican Party, you don't get to keep your seat at the table unless you are willing to defend the biggest conspiracy of them all.
You think it's okay to spread false rumors about fraud and undermine the integrity of the election, regardless of what happens?
Dana, the liberal media has done a better job of spreading misinformation.
Oh, come on, Senator. You believe that the election will be free and fair. So does that mean that you are confident that if Donald Trump loses, I know you think he's going to win, but let's just play this out, if he loses, that he will concede?
I'm confident that he's going to win without any question. And yes, I do believe that we will have a fair election. We will honor the results, and we will celebrate the 47th president being Donald Trump.
Imagine, just for a second, imagine how different things would be if the power players within the Republican Party cared less about winning and actually more about America. Imagine if the GOP had turned never Trump after the Access Hollywood tape, after the January 6th insurrection, after we learned about the draconian Project 2025. Instead, the party went all in on their winning horse, endorsing racism, xenophobia, sexism, endorsing violent rhetoric and acts of violence, endorsing a backsliding of our democracy and doing everything to help Trump get another 4 years in power, enabling Trumpism to seep even deeper into the pores of America and live on far beyond 2024. Joining me now is Michael Moore, Academy Award-winning filmmaker and host of the Michael Moore podcast. Michael, it's great to have you back on the show. You know, I don't want to go back to 2016, but you obviously predicted at the time that Trump would win. Last month, you wrote Trump is toast. You know, we're almost 48 hours out from perhaps seeing our first results, but do you stand behind that today?
Oh, even more so. I just keep wondering the gift that the Trump campaign keeps giving us. I don't think they realize, I don't think they really are in touch with where the majority of Americans are at. The majority of Americans do not want this divisiveness. They don't want a threat of violence. We are okay to disagree with each other, but that's where it ends. We go to vote. Who wins, wins. Half the time I've been very happy with who's won, and the other half of the time I haven't been. And we move on with our lives. The fact that the way that what you just played here, I hadn't heard Trump utter those words. I'd heard somebody say that he said them, but to hear him say that about they can shoot through the media, the assassins, go ahead and fire, and all those other things you just played, it's like they really believe that the average normal American wants to hear that. They actually believe that we don't like immigrants. We are immigrants. We are all the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of immigrants, unless you are African American or unless you're amongst the first peoples that were here. We are all the product of immigrants, and we love our grandparents and our great-grandparents and the people that got us here to this great country. And to talk about immigrants in this vicious, vile way, where and you think of all the, the things that we have and we've given the world, and the anger and hatred toward Muslims and Arabs. Steve Jobs. I mean, no, but this never gets discussed. Maybe I'm just a trivia nerd, but he's born of Muslim parents. His parents were Arab, and they put him up for adoption. They had to put him up for adoption, and was adopted by the Jobs family. Yeah. But I wouldn't be talking to you maybe on this device right now in this way without this offspring of a Muslim or an Arab. And I think most Americans, we get down on our knees and thank God that we are the children of immigrants, that we are built this country with immigrants. And the fact that we have somewhere, depending on what numbers you want to believe in, somewhere between 9 million and 11 million jobs right now that we do not have enough people to fill. We have upwards to 11 million unfilled jobs, and as we are told, we have maybe 11 million immigrants who aren't here legally. Geez, doesn't that just, if you have a heart, if you have love in you, if you're proud of this country that was built by immigrants, doesn't somewhere in your head go, geez, we need 11 million jobs filled. We have 11 million people that need citizenship. Why don't we go there? Well, I do, and I think a lot of people are like me, and I think that they are going to be very surprised. I'm talking about the Trump people and the MAGA nation by what's going to happen on Tuesday. Not only do I feel, to answer your question 10 minutes later, that I feel the same way that I felt a few weeks ago that Trump is toast. Absolutely. I feel it more. Now, I know I don't want to say it too loudly because our work isn't done. Right. We all have doors to knock on tomorrow. We all have to make sure we get people to vote. I've asked everybody to think of 3 people that maybe they know at work or school or whatever that aren't going to vote. To get them to the polls, drive them to the polls, take them to lunch afterwards, have a party after work, after you've taken the office to go vote. We have work to do in these 48 hours. But having said that, I'm very optimistic and hopeful. And frankly, and I know people watching this, Mike, how can you say that? Yeah. We have all these crazy people and all the Trumpsters and MAGA Nation. And what I say to them is, honestly, I have a lot of personal, deep faith in my fellow Americans.
Yeah, and it's
that
definitely
they're going to do the right thing.
It's a very important sentiment. I think a lot of people are definitely counting on the goodness of Americans to see this through. Let me just talk about your state, Michigan, for a moment. And I want to talk about the last time you joined us back in July when Biden was still running. You had this to say about his support for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a listen.
The fact that he would decide to hug Netanyahu, to go there and tell him, as the tape you just showed in November, just people wanting a ceasefire, that's it. No, he goes, no. This has, I think, really rattled people in my state.
All right, so that was back in July. Give me a sense of what you anticipate happening in Michigan on Tuesday.
Well, when Biden was running there in the early summer, support for Biden-Harris, which was at 70% 4 years ago, they got 70% of the Michigan Arab Muslim vote, was down to 12% because of Biden endorsing, embracing, and enabling the slaughter of tens of thousands of civilians. I don't know anybody watching this, whether you're Irish, whether whatever group you're part of, if you were Jewish, if you were, I mean, just pick the group. And your tax dollars were going to kill the cousins, the relatives, the friends, the neighbors of where you came from. What do you think the people of Detroit and Dearborn are going to do with that? Well, the good news is Biden stepped aside, Kamala Harris came in, and that 12% support of Biden-Harris jumped to over 43%. That's good news, but it's still quite a bit behind the 70% they had 4 years ago. So we're estimating in Michigan, possibly we need 40,000 votes of the 40,000 Arab and Muslim Americans they're not going to vote for Trump. I mean, he already had 1/3 of the vote. He'll get 1/3 of it this time, not anymore.